Hey, hey, hey. Time for an out of this world story from rSpace. Some people chase money, some people chase love, and some try to chase both while thinking they can buy their way out of consequences. Today on rSpace, the only thing scarier than being caught cheating is being caught in the wrong side of grandma's fury. Cheating wife begged me not to tell her family. I made sure she lost the inheritance. My wife, 27 female, and I, 28 male, of 2 years, has been cheating on me, and I'm done with her. I'm not going to stick around after that. I'm not going to give her the chance to stick with the disease or someone else's kid next time. What I really need help with is deciding what to do next. I have made up my mind, but there's a part of me thinking I might actually be going overboard. I know I'm worked up about all of this right now. I just need cooler heads to listen to the details and give me a more objective opinion. The whole thing has to do with her family. I didn't deal with them any more than I really needed to. They weren't bad people or anything, but I just didn't really get along with them. Her brother was the only one I could really stand to be around, but we weren't really friends or anything. Her grandfather had made a lot of money when he was younger, but he had died about 20 years ago, leaving everything to his wife. It must have been a whole lot of money because her grandma was still living very comfortably. More importantly, she used that money to control her family. I didn't realize this until I got married, but her grandma waved the vague threat of disinheritance over everyone in the family to get them to do what she wanted, my wife included. She was subtle about it, and no one really saw anything wrong with it. She never made any really crazy demands, just the type of thing you'd expect a very traditional old lady to do. The craziest thing she did was talk one of my wife's cousins into removing his tattoo. It wasn't like it was huge. It was just an owl on his shoulder, about 2 or 3 inches tall. You couldn't even see it if you wore a t-shirt. But their grandma threw a fit and demanded that he get it removed. She even offered to pay for the removal. The crazy thing to me is that he didn't even stand up for himself. He folded immediately, accepted her money, and got started with the removal sessions as soon as he could. I asked my wife if she thought it was normal for her grandma to control the family in that way. She just shrugged and said, "She's an old woman. There's nothing wrong with humoring her." I couldn't tell whether she actually believed that or if she had just lived with it for so long that she thought it was normal. Maybe the idea was that she wouldn't be around for much longer, so it wasn't a big deal to do just what she wanted. One thing I knew for sure was that I wouldn't let her interfere in my family that way. She never really tried, but as far as I could tell, she knew that I wasn't the type that would fold to her demands. Sorry for the tangent, but that's all important information, I swear. I feel like you need to know all of that to really understand her actions after I caught her cheating. I found out she was cheating when I heard her on the phone with another man. She hadn't heard me approaching, and I got suspicious when I heard her whispering. I kept approaching her quietly and saw that she was making a phone call. It was hard to make out what she was saying without getting much closer, but from the little I could pick up, it was obviously romantic and definitely something she didn't want me to hear. I didn't talk to her about it right then. I stayed around the corner, took out my phone, and managed to record the last 30 seconds of her conversation before she ended the call. I probably went over that clip a dozen or so times in the next 24 hours until I figured out and wrote down every word she said. They were already wrapping up the call by the time I started recording, but I managed to clearly capture her saying that she missed him. She promised that she'd find the time to slip away soon and said she loved him before she ended the call. I was in denial for a bit. For a second, I convinced myself that she could have been talking to one of her parents. She was very close with her mom, and looking back at everything in writing, it seemed like she could have been talking to her. But when I watched the video again, I knew I wasn't just lying to myself. She was talking quietly, like she knew she was doing something wrong. There was no question about it. She was talking to another man. I didn't sit around feeling sorry for myself, but I didn't say anything right away either. I waited until I had a chance to go through her phone and went straight into her phone calls and texts. I even checked her emails. She's been cheating on me for months with a man from her office. She'd gotten away with it for so long by only doing it when she was at work. She'd meet up with him during her lunch break. He was field staff, so it seemed like he didn't really have a problem finding time to meet up with her. Most of their texts also took place during work hours. She'd been very careful trying to keep the affair out of the house, but she'd slipped up that night and called him when she thought I was busy with something else. The content of the texts was pretty upsetting. There was the standard flirting you would expect from a couple of cheaters. Most of the messages were the arranging when and where they would meet up. I was surprised at how deep the logistics of cheating seemed to run. What really turned my stomach was the number of graphic images they sent to each other. I won't go into detail, but I'm pretty sure you can imagine the kind of things I saw. I still didn't talk to her right away. I met with a lawyer first and started getting things ready for the divorce. In the meantime, I basically shut her out at home. She started asking what was wrong, and I would tell her it was nothing. I wasn't mean to her or anything, just completely emotionally unavailable. When I finally told her I knew about the affair, she didn't fight it. She just sat there quietly for a while, looking guiltier than I'd ever seen her. When she finally spoke, she admitted that it was true, and she said, "You probably hate me now." That line annoyed me because it was like she was fishing for me to say that I didn't. I asked her why she didn't just tell me she was tired of the relationship. She just shrugged. She actually shrugged and said she didn't want to hurt me. At first, it had just been for fun, but then she'd started developing feelings and she didn't know how to cut things off in a clean way. I knew there was nothing she could have said that would have made me feel any better, but seeing her treat her affair and the end of our marriage in such a detached way made me feel numb. It was like our years together meant absolutely nothing to her. She was ready to throw everything away at the drop of a hat. I didn't tell her how it made me feel, though. There was no point venting to her, so I started talking about plans with her. I told her I was filing for divorce, and I let her know that I wasn't planning on leaving the house. She was the cheater, so she could leave. She tried to argue with me about that, but I didn't back down, and eventually she gave in. It seemed like we were set to have an amicable divorce, or at least as amicable as a divorce can be when one of the people involved is a cheater. But she made a request that completely flipped my whole approach on its head. She asked me if I would do her a favor and keep the reason for our divorce quiet. I was confused at first and asked her to explain. She shuffled her feet and said I knew what she meant. I said I didn't. She seemed embarrassed to say it out loud, and I wasn't going to let her off easily. After squirming a bit more, she came out with it. She wanted me to lie to her family about our divorce and say it was entirely my decision. I didn't even need to think for a few seconds to guess why she wanted me to take the blame. It wasn't just about her family. The real concern was her grandmother. She was scared that she'd be cut off for cheating and ruining her closest chance at great-grandchildren. When I asked her if that was the reason, she couldn't look straight at me. I told her she needed to admit it before I could consider anything for her. She muttered under her breath that I was right. Of course. I told her that there was no way I'd agree to that. She practically went on her knees to beg me to reconsider. She even promised to pay me a part of whatever she inherited. I felt insulted by the offer and told her to leave. I was so angry that she could tell it wasn't a good idea to push the idea any further, and she packed her things and left. Before she left, she asked me to think about it and said she'd call me. Obviously, I don't want to help her get out of this whole thing looking squeaky clean, but I also want to make sure I'm thinking straight. I asked a friend of mine for advice, and he said I should take her up on her offer, but it just doesn't sit right with me. I make a lot of money myself, and her grandmother's money has never really crossed my mind. I don't need it, and I don't want it. But I still feel like I need to get another opinion on what I should do before I make a decision. I love that your wife's biggest fear isn't losing you. It's losing Nana's approval. That's how you know the cheating wasn't an accident. It was a career move gone wrong. You're not overreacting. You're just the first person in her family to have some spine not funded by inheritance money. Let her explain to her family why she got dumped harder than grandma's opinions on tattoos. Update. There were some really mixed opinions regarding my last post. Some people thought I was passing up a good opportunity and being an idiot by sticking to my principles. Others seemed to respect what I was going for. I get the people saying I should get something out of this and go for the money, but I couldn't go through with it. The money didn't mean anything to me. Honestly, no one really knows how much money the old lady had, and she had a lot of relatives waiting for her to split it with them. I had a strong feeling that the payout that they were all waiting for wasn't going to be really as big as they expected. I was convinced that she'd leave most of the money to her church when she finally croaked. It seemed like the kind of thing she'd do. Then, there was the simple fact that I didn't want to give her the satisfaction. I mean, just think about it. She cheated on me, and then she was offering me money to pretend it never happened. The more time I took to think about it, the more it pissed me off. When she called me back to ask if I considered her offer, I pretty much repeated what I said the other night. I said there was no way I was going to cover for her and she could keep her money. I didn't want anything from her. She started trying to offer money again, but I told her to keep it. I let her know that I was insulted by the idea that she thought she could pay me off after cheating on me. She started apologizing and begged me to just do it for her. There was something satisfying about the desperation in her voice, about how apathetic she'd been when I'd confronted her. It was refreshing to see her show some kind of emotion. I knew it wasn't remorse, though. She was mostly just scared of being exposed, but I'd take what I could get. I didn't talk to her family about it right away. Maybe it's a little bit petty, but I liked the idea of letting her sweat for a bit. The divorce went on, and I kept dragging the thread of telling her family what she'd done. She kept calling me once in a while to see if I'd changed my mind. I started telling her I was thinking about it. In the meantime, the divorce had been going surprisingly smoothly. She wasn't putting up much resistance or making any ridiculous demands. I think she was trying to keep me happy so it wouldn't change my mind about telling her family. Every time we met with the lawyers, she always had this nervous energy like she was afraid of saying the wrong thing around me and setting me off. It was fun to watch. The fun came to an end a little later when her grandma hosted a family dinner. Nobody ever wanted to miss those, and my ex would drag me to them all the time. When I didn't show up, her grandma got curious. She explained to her that we were separated and getting a divorce, which just led to more questions. Apparently, her grandma had started to suspect that she might be the one at fault and started lecturing her in front of everyone. That was when she covered up by saying it was a mutual agreement. I only found out about that because her grandma was suspicious and called me to confirm. I told her the truth right away. Her granddaughter had cheated on me, and when I talked to her about it, she was completely unapologetic. She sounded outraged and explained that my ex had told her it was a mutual decision. I assured her that it wasn't, and then I told her about her daughter's offer. I didn't leave out any detail either. I told her that she didn't want her family to know the truth because she was scared of being cut out of the will, and I told her how she'd offered to give me part of her inheritance. If I thought she sounded mad before, it was nothing compared to how she became when she heard that. She completely freaked out and went on about ungrateful brats and being taken advantage of. I didn't share my thoughts on how she'd basically set all of that up herself by dangling an inheritance in front of her family. It was none of my business anymore. She was still fuming when she ended the call, and I'm sure she called my ex immediately after, because she called me less than an hour later. The first words out of her mouth were, "Really? How could you?" She went on to say that we had a deal and I'd gone back on it. That's where I lost my cool. I'd never told her that I'd play along with her lie, and I made that clear to her at that moment. She said that I didn't have to say anything because we'd reached an understanding, and that should have meant something. I asked her if she really couldn't see the hypocrisy of saying I was the one who'd betrayed her. I reminded her that we'd taken vows which she'd casually broken. She had chosen to sleep with someone else and start sneaking around with him, and I was the bad person? She begged me to call her grandmother and talk to her. She said she'd been planning a lot of her future around that money, and she didn't know what she'd do if she didn't get it. I didn't sympathize with her. I just told her that I thought it was pretty irresponsible and kind of disgusting to hinge her plans on the future around her grandmother's death. She tried defending herself, saying that it wasn't like that, and she just wanted security. I told her she should have thought about that before she started sleeping around behind my back. That was the last real conversation the two of us had. After that, she tried to make the divorce harder for me. She went from wanting a reasonable split to trying to get everything she could and more. I couldn't tell if she was trying to make up for the security that she'd lost, or if she was just doing it to spite me. The judge had a clear idea, though. My lawyer didn't even have to work hard to make the case. The judge could tell from the sudden shift in attitude and unreasonable demands that she was just being vindictive. It didn't work out too well for her, and she ended up walking away with a lot less than what she originally hoped for. A couple of weeks after the divorce was finalized, I heard from her brother. It was awkward at first. We'd gotten along well when I was married to his sister, but now I was his ex-brother-in-law. After some small talk, he asked how I was getting along after the divorce, and he brought up his sister. He told me that their grandmother was furious with her. She'd thrown all sorts of accusations against her. She said she'd disgraced the family, and she disrespected her by waiting for her to die so she could go after what she had. She swore that my ex wouldn't touch a single cent from her before or after she passed. I don't doubt it either. She's a stubborn old woman, and it's almost impossible to change her mind. Her brother said it was an ugly scene. He'd never seen their grandma that mad before. He said he knew his sister had done me wrong, but she was still his sister. I told him I understood. I guess that was his way of telling me that he wouldn't be keeping in touch. I didn't have any hard feelings towards him. He wasn't responsible for what his sister did, but I was also a bit glad to cut him off. So far, I'd succeeded in staying clear of my ex, and closing contact with her close family was the best way to keep that going. So far, I've still been successful in staying no contact with her and her family. Maybe she'll try to get in touch someday. If she does, I'll definitely post an update. But if there are no parts after this, just assume that she still hasn't gotten in touch, and her grandma still refuses to talk to her. Some of my friends still ask if I regret telling her grandmother the truth. They always bring up the money that I missed out on. My answer is always the same. The money meant less to me than the principle of it. She cheated on me and then tried to buy my silence and walk away rich. Unlike her, my self-respect isn't for sale. I refuse to play her game or bend to her grandmother's twisted rules. She gambled everything on hoping I'd throw my self-respect away for a quick buck, and she ended up with what she deserved. Her begging you to call Grams back? Incredible. Imagine having the nerve to cheat, lie, and then cry, "But my inheritance." If she wanted security, she should have invested in better life choices, not other men. You didn't lose money. You saved yourself from becoming just another puppet in that family's inheritance circus. She spent her time chasing a payday and wound up broke in every way that counts. If you caught your partner cheating and trying to bribe you to keep quiet, would you take the cash or would you do what OP did? Let us know in the comments. And thank you for joining us today on rSpace. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. See you next time.